Welcome back to the quarterly call. All content is for informational purposes and is not investment advice. Please consult with an investment professional. All right, let's jump right into the Q3 2025 update. And I think it's really important for you listening to kind of frame this discussion up front. If you're still mostly thinking about this company as, just making cars, maybe batteries, you're kind of looking in the rearview mirror now. What we heard this quarter, it really signals this massive identity shift they've been working towards. It feels deliberate. They're not just an electric car company anymore. They're positioning themselves very firmly as like the leader in real world AI. AI that actually moves physical things, atoms, not just bits and bytes on a screen.
That's absolutely the core message. Yeah. This whole discussion felt less about, tweaking car models and more about laying the groundwork for this huge technological, disruption. We're looking at a company placing these, monumental bets, really big ones, across three areas that are distinct but also deeply connected. You've got the fully autonomous transport, then there's the mass-scale humanoid robotics, and finally the overhaul of global energy infrastructure. They even tweaked their mission statement, didn't they? Moving beyond just sustainable energy to achieving, sustainable abundance.
Sustainable abundance. Yeah, that phrase definitely landed with some weight. And the tech timelines, the numbers they're putting behind this mission, they're pretty stunning. We need to unpack how they think they can actually pull this off. But let's just hit some of the big ones first. The sheer scale. We heard about this AI5 chip. Management thinks it could be, 40 times better than the last one?
Yeah, 40 times was the number thrown out there. Or safely 10 times, depending on how you measure.
Okay, still huge. And then there's the robot army, the infinite money glitch, as they apparently called it. That seems central to their whole economic plan.
Absolutely. It's positioned as the long-term economic engine.
And maybe the most immediate critical thing, the plan to remove safety drivers from robotaxis in certain areas, they're saying, within months, like by year end.
That's the timeline they put out.
Yeah.
And these points taken together, they fundamentally change the whole equation, right? The risk, the potential reward for the entire company. And you can feel the conviction behind these really aggressive timelines, especially the manufacturing scale-up we need to talk about. It seems to stem from one key internal breakthrough.
Which is?
Clarity. Clarity on unsupervised full self-driving. They feel they've cracked it, at least in principle. And according to them, that achievement is what unlocks, pretty much everything else we're about to discuss. The chips, the robots, the scale.
Yeah.
It all flows from that.
Okay, let's unpack that transportation piece first, because that's where the AI clarity hits the road, literally. And it translates into some big strategic moves, maybe even risks. You mentioned this clarity on unsupervised FSD being a critical inflection point, moving from R&D mode into just massive scale.
Exactly. The tone shift was palpable. Historically, they've been somewhat cautious maybe about promising huge jumps in production volume. But now with this confidence that, okay, the FSD problem is basically solved conceptually, it feels like the floodgates are opening. The stated plan now is to ramp up future vehicle production as fast as they reasonably can, aiming for what was an annualized rate of 3 million units.
3 million? Within 24 months?
Within 24 months, yeah.
Okay, but hold on. We hear about supply chain nightmares constantly. The whole auto sector's seen slowdowns. How can they be so confident about hitting 3 million cars a year in just 2 years? What's changed?
Well, it seems like two main things. First, the constraint has shifted. Before, the big uncertainty was, could they solve autonomy? Now they believe they have. So the main bottleneck becomes the physical supply chain. That's still huge, obviously, but it's a known engineering and logistics problem, not a fundamental AI research problem anymore.
Okay, so it's a different kind of problem.
Right. And second, their vertical integration. Making their own batteries, designing their own chips, we'll get to that, building their own manufacturing systems.
Yeah.
It gives them way more control than, say, a traditional automaker who relies on dozens of external suppliers for key tech. They're essentially building the factory as the product, designed for this kind of exponential growth. The only limit now is getting enough raw materials and basic components through that vast global network.
That ramp up is aggressive. But the real kicker, the shockwave they mentioned, it's not just about new cars rolling off the line, is it?
No, not at all. It's the installed base.
Yeah.
The millions of cars already out there.
Right.
The shockwave comes because potentially millions of those cars, already sold, already driving around, could suddenly become fully autonomous capable. Just boom, via a software update.
An over-the-air update turns your car into a robotaxi platform?
Pretty much. It's that classic network effect, but supercharged. leveraging billions in hardware costs that customers already paid for. If you own a car with the right sensors and computer,
Which many do.
which many do, suddenly its utility, its value, just transforms overnight. And that leads us straight into the robotaxi deployment specifics, which are moving fast now.
Okay, so the immediate roadmap. Robotaxi is already running supervised in Austin and a lot of the Bay Area.
Correct.
But the next big step is taking the safety driver out. At least in parts of Austin, they're targeting within a few months, by the end of this year.
That's the goal. End of the year for removing safety drivers in, as they put it, large parts of Austin initially.
They did sound almost nervous about it, using words like paranoid.
Oh, definitely. They explicitly said they're being paranoid about safety, and frankly, they have to be. Yeah. Imagine the global media firestorm if there's even one significant incident early on. It could set back the whole field, invite heavy regulation.
So they're treading very carefully.
Extremely carefully, making sure it's demonstrably, overwhelmingly safe before pulling that human backup. They want to avoid that massive backlash. But the expansion plan is still ambitious. They expect to be operating robotaxis in some form in maybe 8 to 10 metro areas by year-end. Places like Nevada, Florida, Arizona mentioned, pending all the local regulatory hurdles, of course.
Which won't be trivial.
No, definitely not. But the safety data they shared is pretty compelling.
The numbers were big. 6 billion miles driven by customers using supervised FSD.
6 billion. That's a massive data set for training and validation.
Yeah.
But then you look at the dedicated robotaxi fleets.
Right, the driverless ones.
In Austin, the driverless fleet has done over 250,000 miles. And the supervised development fleet in the Bay Area, over 1 million miles. That 6 billion miles with human oversight provides the foundation, but these driverless miles are the real test.
And one thing they pointed out, which you might not notice, is how these cars just blend in.
Yeah, that's actually a really underappreciated point. They don't have those, giant spinning LiDAR canisters on the roof or tons of extra boxes bolted on.
Like you see on some other autonomous test vehicles?
Exactly. Because these cars were designed from the beginning with autonomy in mind. The sensors are integrated. They look like normal cars.
Which probably helps a lot with public acceptance, right? Doesn't look like some sci-fi experiment driving around.
For sure. It lowers the barrier to entry, makes deployment smoother, faster, less intimidating.
Okay, so seamless integration. And that leads to what they're calling the killer app of autonomy. And it's maybe simpler than people think.
It is surprisingly simple. It boils down to solving distracted driving on a global scale.
So the killer app is just being able to use your phone safely in the car. Texting, reading emails.
Basically, yes. That's what management believes. The ability to reclaim that commute time, to be productive or just relax without the risk of looking away from the road. They expect that level of safety and convenience to drive, quote, nutty demand.
Nutty demand, okay.
It fundamentally changes why you own a car, how you use it, the economic shift.
And that shift is literally shaping their next vehicle, the Cybercab. Production starting Q2 next year.
That's the plan. And it's a complete rethinking, a pure optimization for autonomy.
No steering wheel, no pedals.
None. Why would you need them if the car drives itself? By stripping out everything related to human driving, the steering column, the driver airbags, maybe even some crash structure specific to a human driver, you remove cost, complexity, weight.
It becomes purely about minimizing the cost per mile for the fleet operator.
Precisely. It's designed from the ground up for a transportation service, not just selling a product to an individual. It's the physical manifestation of that business model shift.
Okay, let's dive into the software itself. FSD V14 is rolling out. What's the advice for listeners who might be getting it soon? Sounds like maybe hold off updating immediately.
Yeah, that was the strong suggestion. V14 is a major architectural change, and the priority right now with the early releases is safety above all else.
Which means?
Which means the safety team has put tight constraints on it. So early V14 versions can feel a bit jerky, overly cautious, not as smooth or comfortable as V13 might have been.
Like driving with a nervous student?
Kind of, yeah. That's a good analogy. So the official recommendation was maybe wait until V14.2. By then, they expect to have ironed out those comfort wrinkles, made it smoother and more confident. It's a common thing with big software rewrites: safety first, comfort refinement follows.
Makes sense. What about all the people with older cars? Hardware 3. Are they getting left behind with V14?
No, they address that specifically. There will be a V14 Lite version tailored for the Hardware 3 cars. They're expecting the probably Q2 next year. So those owners aren't stranded. It's crucial for keeping faith with the existing customer base.
Good. But the really exciting software development they mentioned, The thing that sounds like a genuine AI leap is
Yeah.
adding reasoning.
Yes. Reasoning capabilities.
Yeah.
This sounds like moving beyond just reacting really well to sensor data.
So the car can actually think strategically, plan ahead, not just react.
That's the idea. This could come in V14.3 or V14.4, maybe by the end of this year.
Mm.
It allows the car to handle really complex, multi-step, real-world situations intelligently.
Like what? Well, give me an example.
Okay, think about a complicated airport drop-off. Construction everywhere, temporary roadblocks. A purely reactive system might just stop when it sees a barrier. A reasoning system could figure out, okay, the passenger needs gate 42, the direct route is blocked, the goal is to get the passenger close safely. So I'll find the nearest accessible curb, explain why I'm stopping here, maybe suggest they walk the last 50 yards, and then I'll figure out how to navigate this complex detour to find a legal parking spot 5 blocks away instead of just blocking traffic.
Wow. Okay, that's a different level. It's not just driving, it's problem solving.
Exactly. It graduates from being a highly skilled chauffeur to being a sort of logistics planner on the fly.
A true AI step up. And this isn't just for cars, right? The semi-truck is also on this path.
Correct. The semi-factory build-out is apparently on schedule. Equipment's going in now. They expect to be building larger vehicle prototypes late this year, with actual volume ramping up in the second half of next year.
And the autonomy transfers over.
They said the core AI tech extends quite easily to the semi. The main focus has been passenger cars, just because the data is richer, the scale is bigger right now. But the expectation is that autonomous semis will be huge for maybe shorter routes, hub-to-hub, last-mile stuff, complementing long-haul rail, which is already pretty efficient point-to-point.
Okay, shifting from the applications, the cars, the trucks, to the engine room. The tech powering all this. This whole transformation, 3 million cars a year, reasoning AI, robot trucks, it all rests on their knack for building core skills from the ground up. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. Starting with basically zero expertise in areas like charging networks or chip design or battery making.
Or AI software itself, they built all of that internally.
Right, and that history of deep vertical integration, doing it themselves, seems to be the justification for their next huge bet, building their own custom AI chip, the AI5.
It has to be. This isn't just about tweaking performance. It's about aiming for total dominance in AI compute efficiency by controlling the whole stack, hardware and software.
So let's talk about AI5. The claims are bold, 40 times better than AI4, or as you said, safely 10 times better. What's the magic trick? How do they get that kind of leap?
The key seems to be radical, almost ruthless simplicity. Because they design the software and the hardware, they know exactly what the AI needs to do in the car or the robot,
Which is mostly.
which is overwhelmingly running very specific types of neural networks, vision transformers, control models. They don't need a chip that can also run, video games or complex physics simulations really well.
So they trim the fat.
Exactly. They strategically deleted big chunks of what you'd find on a general purpose chip.
Hmm.
They mentioned removing the legacy GPU core entirely and the dedicated image signal processor, the ISP.
Wait, removing the GPU and ISP, don't you need those for vision processing? How does removing them increase performance?
It sounds counterintuitive, right? But think about a general purpose chip, like from NVIDIA or Qualcomm. It has to be good at everything. That means lots of complex parts, GPU, CPU, ISP, video coders, decoders, all needing to talk to each other over wide, power-hungry internal data paths or highways. By removing the components that aren't strictly necessary for their specific AI workload, they eliminate all that communication overhead, the complexity, the latency, and importantly, the heat generated by those unused parts.
Ah, okay. Less traffic, less heat.
Right, and that frees up precious silicon area and power budget to just pack in more of the specialized cores that do excel at neural network math, the tensor cores. It becomes a highly specialized AI inference engine.
Pure deep learning, optimized for the edge. And this specialization lets the chip physically shrink. They mentioned half reticle. What does that mean for us?
Yeah, that's a manufacturing detail, but it's really important. A reticle is basically the stencil used in chip making. There's a physical limit to how big a single chip you can make in one go, roughly one reticle size. If you can achieve the performance you need in a chip that only takes up half a reticle, you get two huge wins. First, you get twice as many chips from every expensive silicon wafer, slashing your cost per chip.
Okay, double the chips per wafer.
And second, smaller chips generally have much better yields, meaning fewer chips have defects, because there's simply less area for a random microscopic flaw to hit something critical. So lower cost and more usable chips.
And that efficiency, the performance packed into that smaller, simpler chip, Translates directly to what? Lower cost, less power drain.
Both. That's the goal. They project AI5 will offer the best performance per watt crucial for battery life in a car or robot by maybe a factor of 2 or 3 compared to alternatives. And, crucially, the best performance per dollar by maybe a factor of 10. That 40x number seems to be the theoretical peak, while 10x is the more grounded, safe estimate for real-world gains.
Vector of 10 on cost performance, that's huge.
It's enormous. And this relentless focus on efficiency is why they also claimed Tesla AI has the highest intelligence density, the most intelligence packed per gigabyte of model size. They have to be disciplined because the AI has to run efficiently inside the car's limited computer, not rely on a massive cloud connection for every decision.
And the plan for actually making these chips is just as ambitious, right? Not just designing them.
Oh yeah, dual sourcing initially. Both Samsung in Texas and TSMC in Arizona will be manufacturing AI5, focusing on U.S. production to start.
And the strategy is make too many.
Pretty much. Intentional oversupply. That was stated very clearly. Build more AI5 chips than they immediately need for the cars and the robots coming online.
Why?
Because the excess chips get funneled directly into their own data centers. They'll use them for training future AI models, working alongside the NVIDIA hardware they already use. It guarantees that they're never starved for the specialized silicon they need, which would become a major competitive bottleneck for others. It's about securing their future compute needs.
Okay, AI5 is the brain. Now let's talk about the body. The other pillar of this real-world AI push, Optimus, the humanoid robot. This feels like the path to that sustainable abundance goal they mentioned.
It is, but they are also very clear. Bringing Optimus to market is, quote, incredibly difficult. It requires nailing 3 things that haven't really been successfully combined before, at scale.
Which are?
You need the real-world AI, which they think they're solving with FSD development. You need deep expertise in complex electromechanics, actuators, sensors, and you need manufacturing scale for something, well, for which no real supply chain exists today.
What's the single hardest physical part they're wrestling with right now on the robot?
The hands and forearms, they single that out. Creating a truly dexterous, strong, reliable hand with all the actuators and wiring packed into that small space, mimicking human capability is apparently more electromechanically challenging than building the entire rest of the robot combined.
Wow, the hands are harder than the legs, torso, everything else.
That's what they said. Getting that fine motor control, the ability to grasp and manipulate a huge variety of objects reliably. That's the big mechanical engineering hurdle right now.
So where are they today? What can Optimus actually do, and when do we see the next big step?
Well, apparently Optimus units are already walking around their engineering offices 24/7, doing simple, useful tasks. They mentioned visitors can ask a robot for directions to someone's office, and the robot will guide them, navigating around people and obstacles.
Okay, so basic mobility and navigation in a dynamic space.
Right. The next big reveal is planned for Q1 next year, maybe February or March. That'll be Optimus V3. And the goal for V3 is apparently for it to look and move so naturally, so human-like, that you'd feel compelled to poke it to confirm it's actually a robot. So a big leap in aesthetics and fluidity of motion is expected.
Poke the robot. Got it. And a production intent prototype also in Q1.
Also Q1, so V3 showing off capability, and a separate prototype showing what the mass-produced version will actually look like and be built from.
And the manufacturing scale they're talking about here, it dwarfs even the car production numbers.
It's absolutely mind-boggling. Because like we said, there's no existing supply chain for humanoid robot parts, like specialized actuators. They have to build almost everything vertically. The initial plan is to stand up a production line capable of 1 million Optimus units per year.
1 million robots a year.
Starting production towards the end of next year.
Yeah.
But that's just the start. The long-term vision they articulated is scaling that to potentially 50 million, maybe even 100 million units globally.
Okay, that scale leads directly to that phrase the CEO used, the infinite money glitch. What does that actually mean?
It's their framing for the ultimate economic impact.
Yeah.
The modeling suggests that one Optimus robot could potentially be 5 times more productive than a human worker in certain roles.
5 times.
Primarily because it can work 24/7. No breaks, no sleep, no vacations. Tirelessly doing repetitive tasks, dangerous jobs, or even highly skilled work eventually. So if you imagine a world with tens of millions of these robots integrated into the economy, manufacturing, logistics, services, maybe even healthcare, they envision an incredible surge in Optimus someday.
Right.
The sheer productive capacity leads to massive deflation. Goods and services become incredibly cheap and accessible. Human labor becomes increasingly optional for survival.
Right.
That's the path, they argue, to sustainable abundance, where basic needs are met for everyone.
It's a radical vision. Before we leave AI, just quickly, how does the AI in the car and robot relate to the big AI work at XAI with Grok? Are they competing?
No, they position them as completely complementary. Think of it like specialists versus generalists.
Yeah.
Tesla's AI, running on AI5 in the car or robot, has to be small, efficient, specialized, high intelligence density for specific physical tasks, maybe 5–10% the size of a model like Grok.
Yeah.
Grok from XAI is the opposite. It's a massive general-purpose model aiming for artificial general intelligence, AGI, competing with things like ChatGPT. It's designed for broad knowledge, conversation, reasoning in the digital realm.
So how do they work together?
Well, for Optimus, for example, Grok might handle the complex natural language understanding and speech generation, allowing you to talk to the robot naturally, while the smaller, specialized Tesla AI handles the actual physical movement, navigation, and task execution. They serve different but complementary functions.
Okay, let's pivot now to the financials. Because these huge tech bets, AI5 fabs, robot factories, they need a rock-solid financial foundation. And Q3, financially, looked pretty strong. Record set.
Yeah, it was a very solid quarter by the numbers. Record total revenues, record energy business profits and margins, record vehicle deliveries too, and importantly, strong free cash flow, about $4 billion generated in the quarter. That builds up their war chest. Total cash and investments now topped $41 billion.
That's a big cushion.
It's a crucial runway. They need that liquidity to fund these multi-year, high-risk, high-reward projects in AI and robotics without being beholden to short-term market fluctuations.
And the delivery strength, they said, was really driven by continued demand for the new Model Y versions, saw big sequential growth, 25–33% across the major regions.
That seemed to be the main driver, yeah. And if you look at margins, the automotive gross margin, excluding the regulatory credits, ticked up slightly. Went from 15% to 15.4%.
How'd they manage that, given cost pressures?
Mainly through improvements in material costs coming down and just spreading their fixed costs over those higher production volumes, basic economies of scale kicking in. But, and this is important, they were very upfront about facing some pretty significant financial headwinds during the quarter, too. It wasn't all smooth sailing.
Okay, let's focus there. What were the big drags on profit? Hundreds of millions, they implied.
Tariffs were the big one. Over $400 million impact in Q3 alone.
Wow.
And it was split pretty evenly between the car business and the energy storage business.
Why energy?
Because right now, basically all the battery cells used in their Megapack and Powerwall products are sourced from China. So they get hit hard by those import tariffs into the U.S.
Are they fixing that?
They're working on it aggressively, building domestic supply chains, their own cell production, but that takes time. In the short term, tariffs are a major cost factor. Though building the Megafactory in Shanghai helps mitigate this for non-U.S. sales, obviously. Those products don't face the same U.S. import tariffs.
Gotcha. What about operating expenses? They seem to creep up too. Was that just inflation or planned spending?
Mostly planned, it sounds like. A few things contributed. Some restructuring costs as they finalized the AI5 chip design teams, merging efforts, some routine legal costs. But the biggest chunk of the OpEx increase was actually R&D spending.
Investing more in the future tech.
Exactly. Specifically, it was driven by new performance-based stock awards granted to key people working on these big AI initiatives, FSD, Optimus, AI5. It's about retaining and motivating the talent needed for these incredibly ambitious long-term goals.
That R&D bump definitely signals future investment. And it sounds like the overall capital expenditure, the CapEx, is about to go way up.
Yeah.
Beyond normal auto industry levels.
Way up. That was a very clear message from the CFO. CapEx this year is projected around $9 billion. But for 2026, expected to increase, quote, substantially.
Substantially.
This is the financial linchpin for the whole story we've been discussing. That huge CapEx surge is what's needed to actually build the AI5 chip fabs, and critically, that first 1 million unit per year Optimus factory. It's funding the infrastructure for the next decade of planned growth.
Okay, turning to the energy business now. Also hit records, you said, in deployments and profit margins. It's clearly not a side business anymore.
No, definitely a core pillar. Demand for Megapack grid batteries and Powerwall home batteries is apparently very strong, booked out well into next year. And interestingly, they're seeing a new wave of customers coming in. Hyperscalers, the big cloud computing companies and utilities, are increasingly looking at Megapacks specifically for data center power.
Why data centers?
Because data centers use absolutely enormous amounts of electricity, and their power needs are growing exponentially with AI. Megapacks can help stabilize the grid around these power-hungry facilities, ensure reliable power delivery, and smooth out demand peaks. It's becoming critical infrastructure for the AI boom itself.
And the CEO used an analogy about how batteries could impact the whole grid, right? Not just for backup power.
Yeah, it was a great way to illustrate the potential. He pointed out the U.S. grid has something like 1 terawatt of total power generation capacity.
Okay.
But on average, we only use about half of that, zero point 0.5 terawatts, over a 24-hour period, because demand drops way off at night when people are sleeping.
So half the power plants are essentially idle overnight.
Pretty much. So if you install massive battery storage systems, you can soak up all that excess, cheap energy generated overnight when demand is low.
And discharge it during the day when demand peaks?
Exactly. Effectively, you're utilizing that idle generation capacity. His point was that batteries could potentially double the useful energy output of the existing grid per year without building a single new power plant.
Which is huge because building new power plants is incredibly slow and difficult. Permitting, construction.
Takes forever, super expensive, politically charged. Batteries offer a way to unlock massive amounts of existing clean energy capacity much faster.
And to make deployment even faster, they're working on Megapack 4. What's the innovation there?
Megapack 4 is all about streamlining installation for utilities. Right now, if a utility wants to install a big battery farm, they also usually have to build a separate complex electrical substation alongside it to handle the power conversion and grid connection.
That's time and cost.
A lot of time and cost.
Yep.
Megapack 4 is being designed to integrate many of those substation components directly into the Megapack unit itself. Things like switchgear, advanced transformers. The key goal is to have Megapack 4 output power directly at a standard utility distribution voltage, like 35 kilovolts.
So plug and play for the utility. Almost.
Much closer to it. It eliminates the need to design and build that separate custom substation for every project, should significantly speed up deployment time and reduce overall project complexity and cost for the utility customer.
Okay, finally, we have to touch on the corporate governance stuff that came up towards the end. It got pretty heated, focusing on the shareholder vote coming up November 6th, compensation proposals, re-electing directors, but it felt like it was about more than that.
Oh, absolutely. The language used was quite intense. It really framed the vote as being fundamentally about maintaining influence, maybe even control, over the company's long-term direction, especially regarding these massive capital-intensive bets like the robot army, as they put it.
Right. The CEO specifically talked about needing enough voting control, aiming for the mid-20s% range to steer the ship on these big projects without being, quote, unfireable.
Yeah, it's a fine line he's trying to walk there. Influence, not absolute control.
But why is that level of influence deemed so critical right now, particularly for things like Optimus and the AI chip factories?
The argument presented was all about the time horizon. Building an AI5 fab, building a 1 million robot-a-year factory. These aren't quarterly projects. These are decade-long endeavors requiring immense, sustained investment and unwavering vision. The fear, as articulated, is that without sufficient voting influence at the top, a group of shareholders focused only on the next quarter's profits, or maybe an activist investor, could force a change in strategy.
Could derail the big projects.
Exactly. They could push the company to pull back, be more conservative, maximize short-term cash flow instead of making these enormous, potentially world-changing long-term bets that are needed for that sustainable abundance vision.
And that fear seemed to fuel the really strong comments about the proxy advisory firms, ISS and Glass Lewis, calling them corporate terrorists. That's strong language.
Extremely strong. It points to what management sees as a fundamental flaw in modern corporate governance, especially with the rise of passive investing. The issue they highlighted is that huge index funds, Vanguard, BlackRock, etc., who own massive chunks of the company's stock, often just outsource their voting decisions entirely to these two firms, ISS and Glass Lewis.
They just follow the recommendations.
Largely, yes. And the critique is that these advisory firms often use standardized, maybe overly simplistic checklists. They might lack the deep, nuanced understanding of a specific company's complex technology roadmap or its unique long-term strategy. They're assessing hundreds, thousands of companies.
So why is that seen as such a threat?
Because it effectively delegates enormous voting power to third-party advisors who aren't actually shareholders themselves and whose analysis might prioritize short-term governance metrics over long-term strategic value creation. If ISS or Glass Lewis recommends voting against, say, a director crucial to the AI program or against a compensation plan designed to retain key AI talent, the index funds often automatically vote no.
even if it hurts the company long term.
That's the argument, that this structure can lead to outcomes that are, in their words, extremely destructive to the company's ability to execute on truly ambitious, transformative projects like Optimus or AI5, even if those projects hold the key to massive future value for those same shareholders. So management is essentially saying this passive fund delegation creates a misalignment, giving immense power to advisors who may not fully grasp or support the radical long-term vision. They urged shareholders to look past the advisor recommendations and vote with the board, arguing the directors are the ones actually in the arena driving the AI initiatives daily. Hashtag outro.
Okay, so let's try and tie these big threads together for everyone listening. It feels like three interconnected pillars emerge from this update. First, you have the clarity on autonomy, on FSD. That's what's enabling the aggressive scale-up in vehicles, that 3 million unit goal, and the robotaxi rollout.
Right. Pillar 1, solved autonomy enables scale.
Second, you have the proprietary, super specialized hardware, the AI5 chip. That's the engine providing the raw compute power with unmatched efficiency and low cost, crucial for both cars and robots.
Pillar 2, custom silicon provides the efficient intelligence engine.
And third, there's Optimus, the humanoid robot. That's positioned as the ultimate expression of this real-world AI, the key to unlocking that future vision of sustainable abundance through radically increased productivity.
Pillar 3, embodied AI aims for economic transformation. And they all feed each other, right?
How so?
Well, the miles driven by the FSD fleet train the AI. That improved AI gets deployed not just in cars, but also in the Optimus robots. The robots, potentially built using AI-driven manufacturing, could then help build cars or other robots more cheaply. And the energy business provides both the power infrastructure and significant cash flow to fund the massive R&D and CapEx needed for AI and robotics. It's presented as a cohesive, self-reinforcing cycle.
Yeah, it's a compelling narrative. This update wasn't just about Q3 numbers. It was really about laying out the blueprint, the sheer scale of the bets being made, and how it all hinges on achieving and leveraging AI leadership. It gives you, the listener, a much clearer picture of the stakes involved.
Absolutely. The clarity on the roadmap, even with the huge execution risks, is invaluable.
So as we wrap up, here's a final thought to maybe mull over, something that was touched on but has really profound implications if it plays out. It's this idea of the distributed inference fleet. Think about it. If they succeed in getting tens of millions of these vehicles on the road, and each one has, say, a kilowatt of highly efficient AI5 computing power, that's potentially 100 gigawatts of compute distributed globally, not in a giant data center, but spread across millions of cars.
Right. What if those cars, when they're parked, when they're bored, can lend their computing power back to the network?
Exactly. Performing useful computation, maybe training AI models, running simulations, who knows, using the car's existing power and cooling. You'd essentially have created the world's largest distributed supercomputer, almost as a side effect of building cars and robots.
100-gigawatt supercomputer on wheels. The strategic implications of having that kind of compute asset, essentially mobile and already paid for, that's definitely something to keep an eye on, a future capability that could be incredibly powerful.
Indeed. Lots to think about there. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Quarterly Call. For more episodes, please remember to rate and follow our show. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.